Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
Smallpox, the disease that shaped history. Hey everyone, welcome to History Unleashed. I'm Leanne, and today we have another co-host helping us out. Her name's Melanie.
Hi everybody.
We're going to dive into the history of smallpox, one of the deadliest diseases humanity has ever faced.
Yeah, smallpox didn't just kill millions, it shaped history, influenced leaders, and led to some of the most significant breakthroughs in medicine. We've got stories about presidents, riots, and even how humanity managed to beat this disease for good.
There's so much to cover, so let's jump in and unleash the past. Segment 1. So what was smallpox?
Okay, let's start with the basics. What was smallpox? It was caused by the variola virus, and it was spread like wildfire through close contact and respiratory droplets.
Right, and once you caught it, you were in for a rough ride. First came the fever, fatigue, and body aches, and then the rash. This wasn't a minor rash, though. It turned into these fluid-filled pustules that covered your body. It was gross. The survivors were often left with deep scars, and some went blind.
The death rate was around 30%, which was just staggering. For centuries, people had no cure and no way to stop it. Smallpox was like this constant, invisible threat hanging over everyone.
Segment 2. Smallpox in Ancient History. Now let's rewind even further. Did you know that smallpox has been around for thousands of years? Some historians think it appeared as early as 10,000 BCE.
Yeah, and we've got evidence of smallpox scars on Egyptian mummies, including Pharaoh Ramses V. It spread through trade routes, especially the Silk Road, making it one of the earliest global pandemics.
By the time of the Roman Empire, it was killing millions. One of the worst outbreaks, the Antonine Plague in the 2nd century, might have been caused by smallpox. It devastated the Roman military and economy. Segment 3. The Columbian Exchange and Smallpox in the Americas.
Speaking of global spread, smallpox played a massive role during the Columbian Exchange. When European explorers arrived in the Americas, they brought more than just goods, they brought diseases.
Exactly. Indigenous populations had no immunity to smallpox, and the disease wiped out entire communities. Some estimates suggest smallpox killed up to 90% of native populations in certain areas.
It's hard to overstate the impact. Smallpox didn't just change lives, it reshaped continents. It played a huge role in colonization, often weakening resistance to European conquest.
Segment 4. Benjamin Franklin's heartbreaking loss. Not everyone was so lucky, though. Benjamin Franklin's story is one of the saddest. His 4-year-old son, Francis, died of smallpox in 1736.
Yeah, Franklin later admitted that he regretted not inoculating his son. At the time, it was a controversial procedure and he hesitated.
That decision haunted him for the rest of his life. After Francis's death, Franklin became a huge advocate for inoculation, urging others not to make the same mistake.
It's heartbreaking. Even someone as brilliant as Franklin couldn't escape the fear and uncertainty surrounding smallpox back then.
Segment 5. The 1853 New Orleans Riot. Now fast forward to 1853, and smallpox was still causing chaos, this time in New Orleans. The city mandated vaccinations, and people lost it.
Right? The New Orleans vaccine riot, people were furious about the mandate. Seeing it as government overreach, there was so much mistrust of the vaccine and medical authorities.
It got so bad that the city had to call in the militia to restore order. The whole thing shows how vaccine resistance isn't a modern phenomenon. It's been around for centuries.
And it's a reminder of how fear and misinformation can make even life-saving measures controversial.
Segment 6. Theodore Roosevelt and smallpox.
Even future presidents weren't immune to smallpox. Literally, Theodore Roosevelt caught it in 1898 during the Spanish-American War.
Yeah, and even while he was sick, Roosevelt kept leading his troops. Classic Teddy, tough as nails.
His story shows that smallpox didn't discriminate. It didn't matter if you were a soldier, a politician, or a farmer. It affected everyone.
Segment 7. Smallpox and the Slave Trade. Here's a darker connection. Smallpox and the transatlantic slave trade. Ships carrying enslaved Africans often became hotbeds for smallpox outbreaks.
Absolutely. Enslaved people were frequently exposed to smallpox in horrific conditions during their forced voyages. Survivors were often sold at higher prices because their immunity was seen as valuable.
It's just another example of how smallpox intersected with some of the most tragic chapters in human history. Segment 8.
Variolation to vaccination.
Before vaccines, we had variolation, which was risky but better than nothing. Then came Edward Jenner in 1796, who revolutionized everything.
Jenner's idea was genius. He used cowpox and less severe viruses to create immunity against smallpox. It was safer and way more effective than variolation.
And it laid the groundwork for modern vaccines. Jenner's work literally changed the world. Segment 9. The Global Eradication of Smallpox.
Fast forward to 1980, before I was born, when the World Health Organization declared smallpox eradicated. It's still the only human disease we've completely wiped out.
That's thanks to decades of vaccination campaigns and global collaboration. Health workers went to the most remote places to make sure no one was left behind.
It's one of humanity's greatest achievements, proving what we can do when we work together.
Segment 10. Lessons from Smallpox. So, what can we learn from smallpox today? For one, it shows the power of science. Vaccines have saved millions of lives.
And it highlights the dangers of misinformation, whether it's the 1853 riot or the 1921 epidemic. Fear and distrust have always been hurdles.
But smallpox also reminds us of humanity's resilience. We faced one of our deadliest enemies, and we won.
Segment 11. The development of vaccination campaigns. So by the late 19th and early 20th centuries, vaccination campaigns were starting to become more organized. Governments and public health officials began seeing vaccines as public good.
Exactly. In some places, vaccinations became mandatory, like we saw in New Orleans. But the campaigns weren't just about making vaccines. They were about convincing people to trust them.
And that's where public education campaigns came in. Poster, pamphlets, and even door-to-door efforts helped spread awareness about vaccines.
Segment 12. Edward Jenner and the first vaccine. We can't talk about vaccination without mentioning Edward Jenner. In 1796, he changed the game by creating the first smallpox vaccine.
He noticed that milkmaids who got cowpox and much milder disease never seemed to catch smallpox, so he tested his theory by infecting a boy with cowpox and later exposing him to smallpox. The boy didn't get sick.
It was a breakthrough that saved millions of lives. Jenner's work paved the way for modern immunology and gave humanity its first real weapon against smallpox. Segment 13. Eradication of Smallpox. So, after centuries of devastation, humanity finally eradicated smallpox. Let's talk about how we got there.
This is one of the greatest success stories in public health. It all started with coordinated global efforts led by the World Health Organization in the mid-20th century. They launched the intensified smallpox eradication program in 1967.
Right, and this wasn't just about vaccines. It involved incredible organization and innovation. Health workers traveled to the most remote places on Earth, sometimes by foot, boat, or even camel, to ensure everyone was vaccinated.
It was meticulous work. They used something called ring vaccination. Instead of vaccinating entire populations, they focused on continuing outbreaks by vaccinating anyone who might have come into contact with an infected person.
And let's not forget the importance of surveillance. They relied on local communities to report cases, often incentivizing them with rewards. It was a global effort involving scientists, healthcare workers, and everyday citizens.
The last known natural case of smallpox was in Somalia in 1977, after years of rigorous monitoring to confirm there were no hidden cases. The World Health Organization officially declared smallpox eradicated in 1980.
It's hard to overstate what an achievement this was. Smallpox had been humanity's shadow for thousands of years. Its eradication marked the first, and so far only time, we've completely wiped out a human disease.
And it proved what we can accomplish when countries work together. It's a testament to science, collaboration, and determination. Segment 14, Smallpox and Pop Culture. Smallpox even shows up in pop culture. Did you know it's mentioned in Laura Ingalls Wilder's Little House on the Prairie books?
Yeah, and there's a scene in Outlander where Claire, the time-traveling nurse, recognizes smallpox during her adventures. It's a reminder of how the disease loomed large in people's minds, even centuries later. Segment 15, Lessons from Smallpox. So as we wrap up, let's talk about the lessons smallpox teaches us. What do you think the biggest takeaway is?
First and foremost is the power of science. Without Jenner's vaccine and the advancements that followed, smallpox would still be with us today. It shows how critical research and innovation are for public health.
Absolutely. But it's not just about the science. It's also about trust. The resistance to vaccines in places like New Orleans or during the 1921 epidemic shows how dangerous misinformation and fear can be.
It's inspiring to think that we can take on something as massive as smallpox and come out victorious.
It also reminds us of the value of preparation. Smallpox outbreaks forced societies to innovate, organize, and respond quickly. Lessons that are all still relevant today, especially with emerging diseases.
And honestly, it's a story of resilience. Smallpox scarred humanity in so many ways, but we adapted, learned, and ultimately defeated it. That's something to be proud of.
It really is. And smallpox may be gone, but the lessons it left behind will stay with us forever. In closing, smallpox was one of humanity's greatest challenges, but it also brought out our greatest strengths: resilience, innovation, and the drive to protect one another.
Thanks for joining us today on History Unleashed. Don't forget to follow us for more incredible stories from the past.
Or email us at historyunleashedleanne@gmail.com. That's historyunleashedleanne@gmail.com.
Until next time,
Keep unleashing the past.
Free audio post-production by outphonic.com.